The Babylon Project was our last best hope for sci-fi, a self-contained podcast 1 hour long located on the internet, a place of fun and discussion for Babylon 5 fans everywhere, a shining beacon in cyberspace, all alone in the night. It was the dawn of the 20th anniversary of Babylon 5, the year the Great War to free Bab 5 came upon us all. This is a story of the last of the Babylon podcast. The year is 2016. The name of the place is the Babylon Project Podcast.
This is Maggie Egan, your ISN news anchor, and you're listening to the Babylon Project podcast.
Hey there, Babylon 5 fans. Welcome back to another very interesting, very arc episode of the Babylon Project podcast. How are you tonight, my friend?
I'm good. I'm really good.
And that, my friend, by the way, is, as always, Jim Arrowwood, my partner in crime on this actually very nice Sunday afternoon.
Yeah, it is nice out.
Yeah, it's been pretty down here. Finally got to go camping again after many, many years. I was always one of these people that sleeps on a sleeping bag on a thin little pad on the ground. And I will tell you what, at 52, I've decided something.
Yes?
I want a cot. Yeah, so it's been good. I'm one of these people, I may not look like it, but I need to be outdoors.
Yeah.
Happy's definitely, we got to be outdoors yesterday as well. It was fun. Since this is a war-based episode, I guess I can relate this story. My son got to shoot a Mosin Nagant for the first time.
Ah.
You know, the Russian 30-06 equivalent, big ugly gun, iron buttstock.
Oh, wow.
Oh, he had a blast. He didn't want to shoot it at first because he had heard how much recoil it had, and when he was telling friends at church this morning about it, shooting, the ones who knew about the gun, they had one question: how many bruises?
Jeez.
But it was a fun one to shoot. Anyway, we're not here.
However,
this is neither the outdoor. This is not the outdoor channel.
Yes,
Beat you
this
to it.
is
The Babylon Project podcast.
Coming of Shadows.
This episode, just to start us off, this episode was Babylon 5's first Hugo Award.
Oh, no kidding.
Yep. It beat out, just to tell you how highly regarded this was. You know, a lot of people like to talk about how it beat out Star Trek.
Right.
And that was the episode The Visitor.
Oh, wow.
Now, you're more familiar. I kind of, my brain skips. Which one was The Visitor?
Well, The Visitor was when Benjamin Sisko and Jake were down in engineering on the Defiant, and there was something going on with the warp core, and Benjamin asked for a tool, and he put it into the warp drive to stabilize it, and then he was hit by a plasma burst from the warp drive, and he phased into another realm or another universe, but he kept coming back over and over and over again. And Jake spent his life learning about science and physics and warp mechanics and things like that, trying to bring Benjamin back. Finally, at the very end, Jake was very old, living by himself in Louisiana, and he was telling this story to a girl, and Benjamin did appear in his home, and Jake had to die in order to save his father.
It was a powerful episode, if I remember.
It was absolutely one of the best episodes of Star Trek ever.
Yeah. Okay. But you're bringing this back. You're bringing this one back to me. But it didn't just beat that episode. It also beat Toy Story. It beat 12 Monkeys. And amazingly, it beat out Apollo 13 to win this Hugo. Now, for those of you who might need a reminder as to why this episode was so powerful, Jim, you want to go ahead and give us a summary?
Archive. Access. Initiated.
The Emperor of the Centauri Republic, Turhan, makes a visit to Babylon 5, where he plans to make an historic speech. Ambassador Jakar of the Narn regime makes a plan to assassinate Turhan, but before Turhan can deliver his address, he collapses and is taken to MedLab, where he asks Dr. Franklin to deliver a message to Jakar. Franklin agrees and tells Jakar that the Emperor's speech was to be a public apology for what the Centauri people and his family have done to the Narn in the past, hoping to make amends. Upon hearing this news, Jakar is willing to consider the possibility that there can be peace between his people and the Centauri. As Turhan hopes to repair relations between his people and the Narn, other high-ranking Centauri have other ideas. Believing that Turhan's death is at hand, Lord Rifa tells Londo that their faction must do something that will distinguish them from other factions that are wanting control of the government. So Londo uses the shadows to attack the Narn colony in Quadrant 14. With his last breath, Turhan whispers to Londo that they are both damned. However, when asked, Londo tells Rifa and those around him that it was the Emperor's last wish that they continue the fight for the glory of the Centauri Republic. Meanwhile, back on Centauri Prime, Prime Minister Malachi is assassinated, making way for a member of Rifa's faction, Turhan's nephew, to ascend to the throne. Following the attack on the Quadrant 14 colony, the Narn regime believes that they have no choice but to declare formal hostilities against the Centauri Republic. Mr. Garibaldi receives a cryptic message from Sinclair, who is on Minbar, and telling him to be aware of the coming darkness and stay close to Kosh, as well as stay away from the shadows. Delenn also receives a similar message.
Character. Files. Opened.
Well, there it is.
There it is. Thank you. This episode was not only powerfully written, frankly, it was really powerfully cast, in my opinion.
Oh, yeah. We had Frederick Lane as Ranger.
Right.
His only appearance in Babylon 5. And he had credits dating back to 1978, including Sliders, Men in Black, From the Earth to the Moon, the 1998 miniseries.
Right.
X-Files, Fortress 2, Firefly, Lost.
And here's where the next one you say is where our friends like Wayne are going to remember him.
Oh, yes. Lost, you mean?
Yep.
Yeah. And Dark Knight Rises.
Yeah, I kind of remember him from Men in Black and From Earth to the Moon. That actually is a fantastic little miniseries HBO did, but I certainly remember him from Lost.
Okay.
The marshal who had what's-her-name in handcuffs for the first half dozen episodes. Yeah, my Lost trivia stinks.
Marshall Edward Mars in my notes, because I never did watch Lost.
It actually is a very good show. It's definitely worth the watch. The season length would vary. They kind of lost the way in the third season, though.
Oh.
And then they got it back on track later.
I don't know. Maybe one day after I retire, I'll binge watch it.
Yep.
There's only 6 years of it, as far as I know.
Right.
So.
And some of the seasons are, like I said, fairly short. Who else did we have?
Okay, we had Malachi Thorne, a great actor, as the Centauri Prime Minister. And they used his first name for the part. He was Prime Minister Malachi.
I did not make that connection until you just said it.
Oh, wow. I'll tell you what, that blew me away when the first time I saw it, because I knew right away who Malachi Thorne was.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. This is his only appearance in Babylon 5. Of course, he got killed off really quickly.
Right.
He's got credits dating all the way back to 1951, including Outer Limits, Batman, Lost in Space, Wild Wild West, Time Tunnel, Voyage to the Bottom of the Sea, Mission Impossible, Land of the Giants, $6 Million Man, Project UFO.
Oh my gosh.
He was in Star Trek original series, the Menagerie and Next Generation episode. He was Senator Pardek.
Yeah, he was the Commodore in Menagerie, wasn't it?
Yes, he was Jose Commodore Mendez was his name, I believe.
Commodore Mendez, uh-huh.
Yeah, and he was actually, as far as the episode was concerned, he was not there. He was just a projection,
Right.
By the Telosians.
Though he came back in, yeah, he was the one prosecuting Spock, if I remember.
He was the one that wanted Spock hung out to dry. That is correct.
Yeah.
We had Turhan Bey as the Centauri Emperor, who also...
Speaking of massive credits, amazing actor.
Yes, not a whole lot of science fiction, but he was in 2 appearances for Babylon 5. He was, of course, Centauri Emperor Turhan, and using his own first name, of course.
Right.
And then he was Turval, a Minbari, and that was his last appearance in anything.
Yeah, he passed away just a few years ago.
Yeah. And then he has credits dating back to 1941, and his science fiction include Sequest 2032 and The Visitor from 1997.
Uh-huh. I know he was in at least a couple of the Mummy movie, 1 or 2 of the Mummy movies.
Mm-hmm.
Alibaba is another one I remember him in from way, way back. I used to love watching the old 1940s and 1950s sort of adventure type movies like that.
You will, I don't know, I might catch some grief over this, but I think sci-fi and fantasy and horror are 3 different
I agree.
things, and they always seem to get lumped together.
I agree with you.
When I say sci-fi, I'm talking sci-fi.
Uh-huh.
We also had Neil Bradley, who was in a ton of Babylon 5 episodes.
And that seemed to be his main acting work, actually.
Oh.
Crusade and Babylon 5, he had a single role in a series called Hustling, and he had an uncredited appearance in Into the Woods last year, just as a villager.
Okay. And then we have 2 of them that we've already talked about: Jeff Conway as Zach and William Forward as Rifa.
Yeah.
Slimy Rifa.
Oh, yeah. You just love to hate him.
Yeah.
In a very different way than you love to hate Alfred Bester, but he's still in the love to hate him category.
Yeah, well, Bester didn't try to hide his
nefarious intent.
There you go. Yeah.
Oh wow. Now, Jeff Conway is not regular cast yet, is he?
Not at this point, no.
I think next season he's promoted to regular.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, because next season he becomes pretty much officially Garibaldi's number 2.
Right.
Initiating plot analysis.
Okay. The Coming of Shadows. Wow.
Right. Yep.
The first thing, because it opens on Centauri Prime.
Right.
And the first thing that stands out is Emperor Turan himself, and not because of the white robe, the white outfit, Emperor's outfit, anything else. It's no crest, no hair crest, very old and kind of, sick, definitely in failing health.
Yes, and the Prime Minister definitely does not want him making a trip.
No, he's very much worried about him even surviving the trip.
Right.
Yeah. Now, one thing interesting here, there had been some discussion before, not just between us, but earlier in the fandom at this point. This is where it really is confirmed that the Centauri women shave their heads; they're not bald.
Okay.
There had been, I remember on Usenet, there had been debate and question back and forth between the two, and Turan makes this comment about maybe the women were right about shaving their heads. So it's absolutely confirmed at this point.
Well, I imagine the guys alone just keep the hairdressers plenty busy as it is. So
Yeah, definitely, definitely there. And as it comes out, the size and fullness of the crest is representative of someone's rank,
right.
which is going to bring up a question from me a little further along in this episode. If a large wide crest indicates higher rank, I'm curious why someone doesn't have much of a crest.
Yeah.
Anyway,
I don't know.
huh?
I don't know. It's kind of hard to say. Styles change
Yeah.
from time to time. Now I wonder is Turhan anticipating that there's going to be a crisis? Because I thought his goodbye sounded awful final.
I don't know. I honestly couldn't say. If not that, I think he's at least being honest with himself about just how ill he really is at this point.
Yeah. Well, he insists on making this trip because apparently whatever it is he wants to do is extremely important to him.
Extremely. And it seems like it's something that he can't trust anyone else to do.
Well, we find that out later. Yeah, there's an awful lot of stuff going on behind the scenes.
A lot. Oh, yeah. But before that happens, we jump over to Babylon 5. Probably one of my, in some ways, this is one of my favorite Jakar Sheridan. Actually, this is my favorite Jakar Sheridan moment. But one of my favorite Jakar rants. Because let's face it, Jakar's having a full-blown temper tantrum over the Emperor's visit.
Well, and you can't blame him. These two people have had a not very pleasant history with one another, and he does not feel it is appropriate that Turhan be allowed on the station. But what Jakar apparently is forgetting that is what the station is there for.
It's what it's about.
Yeah, to bring people together. And then, Jakar, he just is not going to listen to reason, which has been a pattern of his all along.
True, very true. And Sheridan shuts him down with a classic. I've actually made this one of my, how sometimes you adopt a phrase. This is one of those phrases that I've adopted. Go ahead and hit it.
This station is open to everyone. Now, if the Emperor wants to come and visit Babylon 5, I think it's great. It raises our visibility, and it helps the folks back home think that maybe we're doing some good.
So you're going to allow this, even over my objections?
What did I suddenly turn invisible or something? Yes, Ambassador. The Emperor is allowed to come aboard. Now, if this bothers you, I suggest you stay in your quarters, stick your fingers in your ears, and hum real loud until it's over.
Oh, that is one of my all-time favorite quotes from the show. That one and one we'll have in the future. Got it in one, Mr. Garibaldi.
Did you hear Sheridan almost make a mistake?
Huh?
Did you hear Sheridan almost make a mistake?
What?
Listen again.
This station is open to everyone. Now, if the Emperor wants to come and visit Babylon 5, I think it's great. It raises our visibility.
He almost said hope instead of visibility.
Oh gosh, it's like he skipped ahead.
Yep. He almost slipped, but it wasn't bad enough for them to worry about doing a retake, I guess.
Yeah, I guess it sounded enough like he was just so frustrated he was stumbling over his words with Jakar.
Yeah. Now you say this episode is the one that won the Hugo. Is it the only Babylon 5 episode that won a Hugo Award?
No. In fact, it will win a Hugo in the next season as well.
Okay.
I believe it was Severed Dreams when they broke away from Earth.
Okay.
The space battle was amazing. The story was amazing. It just was another jaw-dropping episode.
Uh-huh.
So yeah, it will. They will come back. It will be next season that we get the next episode. Now, continuing on though, we've got some odd person strolling onto the station.
Yes.
At the very inconvenient time of the Emperor's visit.
Right.
Yeah, this is our first really clear view of a ranger.
Right. The guy that was greeting people coming on, checking their IDs and things, mentioned that this was his third visit in a month.
Yep. Now, if you go back in some of the previous episodes,
Uh-huh.
it wasn't necessarily this guy coming in uncredited, but you will find that you can see someone dressed in ranger garb spotted here and there amongst the extras in the backgrounds.
Oh, I think I did notice that.
Yeah, I mean, you might have actually mentioned it before, I think, in one of our earlier episodes.
That could be.
So, but this is our first real clear view.
Yeah.
And speaking of slime.
Oh, boy. Here he comes.
Yes, the other person on the station worth noting is Lord Rifa,
Yeah.
who is busy conniving.
Yeah. The guy is just absolute. He plays the part perfectly.
Mm-hmm.
William
Indeed.
Forward does a brilliant job.
And in this case, he's going to have Londo blindside the Emperor.
Yeah. And, he expects Londo to take the heat for his ambition. And yep. Londo wants to be loyal to the throne for whatever reason. Maybe he admires her hand, but for some reason, Londo has fallen in with the wrong side here.
Yeah, Londo's interest. I mean, and he'll mention this throughout, is his love of Centauri Prime. I mean that he's loyal to Centauri is never a bit of doubt, and I think, as you say, he just makes a series of bad choices, and at some point there's going to be a defining bad choice that there's a few points in your life where you make defining choices,
right?
And he's getting close to one of them.
Yeah,
in fact, in this very episode, and it's clear, and especially here, he's even agreeing with Veer. He's not comfortable with this.
No, but Londo does also understand that there is a need for change.
Right. And by the way, as long as we're here with Rifa, this is who I was talking about. If prominence and status is reflected in the hair crest, he's got an awfully wimpy hair crest.
Yeah.
For as important as he seems to be.
Yeah.
And
I don't know if the hair crest thing really stands up. And no pun intended there.
You beat me to it. Yeah, well, remember Cartesian kind of tries to set a new style trend by keeping his nice and short.
Yeah, he had a very, very small one.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
And the other issue that I have with Rifa, for a guy who is manipulative as he is, he just consistently underestimates Londo's resources.
Well, nobody else knows.
No, but with what Londo has already done, well, we'll get back to this a little bit later because it'll really show up. It'll really show up at the end of this episode.
Right.
But we'll keep that in our mind.
Okay.
But after this conversation, the Emperor finally arrives, and the first thought that comes to my head is, that's an awfully small crowd for a formal head of state.
Yeah. But I'll tell you what, that he just plays that so cool. I mean, He looks royal.
Yes. He just nails the role.
Yes.
Here's a question for you. Was, in your mind, anyone missing?
Yeah, Londo and Veer. Where were they? I mean, here's the Emperor coming on board, and they're nowhere to be found.
Mm-hmm. I know exactly what you mean. It's like, okay, I mean, you could probably brush this off. Okay, the Emperor was intentionally trying to keep it a small, private, keep it quiet as far as, which goes against the grain of the Centauri in general, but I already get the feeling that this Emperor is not one who's putting a whole lot of store on pomp and circumstance himself.
Right. Well, not only that, he is more or less impotent as a leader now because he is so close to death. And with all the other factions vying for prominence, he's probably turned more or less into a figurehead.
In some ways, though, we'll find out he's got some plans of his own where that's concerned as well.
Yeah.
What's interesting about this emperor, the big question that he has, they're almost one of the first things out of his mouth. He wants to see a Vorlon.
Yes, don't we all?
Yep. Yeah, and you notice the Centauri had this, as advanced as the Centauri are, they've had the same problem visiting Vorlon space as we have.
Oh, yeah.
So, the question becomes, has anyone got a solid relationship with the Vorlons?
No, they are xenophobic. They don't work outside of themselves. They don't even get involved hardly ever. So.
Yep. Rifa seems to be conniving against this emperor, and it seems that he's not necessarily alone in this case, because it sounds like Jakar is, shall we say, planning an assassination.
Oh, yeah. Jakar is going to make a statement that will definitely result in interstellar war.
Yep. In a funny way, it almost seems like Jakar and Rifa are after the same thing. They both want the emperor gone, and they want the conflict.
Yes, and yeah, they definitely do. Of course, this is a really, excuse the pun again, deadly serious moment for Jakar, and I really like when he looked directly into the camera as he was delivering his lines. I mean, you knew that he was completely serious.
Yeah,
and he was not going to back down.
No, this was for real for him. This was, we talk about defining moments, those few defining moments in one's life.
Mm-hmm.
This would have been one of those for him.
It would have been one of his last ones too.
Right.
But he knew that.
And he was walking in directly to that.
Yes.
Now, this kind of seems to be a death-focused episode. We get a private audience with Sheridan and the Emperor, and he's looking back in the past and forward to the end of his life in a way.
Yeah. Well, so much has happened, and he talks about how he doesn't really feel that he was ever really in command. He had to do a lot of what others wanted him to do, and he is finally going to do something that he has made up his mind to do.
He sounds like he's got something significant up his sleeve.
Yes, he does.
And he has a wonderful quote just about the sum of his life that we want to play.
No regrets, then?
A few, but just a few. You?
Enough to fill a lifetime. So much has been lost. So much forgotten. So much pain. So much blood. And for what? I wonder. The past tempts us, the present confuses us, and the future frightens us. And our lives slip away, moment by moment, lost in that vast, terrible in-between. But there is still time to seize that one last fragile moment. To choose something better. To make a difference, as you say. And I intend to do just that.
So finally, he wants to do something significant to make a difference. He has watched what has gone on all these years and just stood by and let things happen that he didn't want to happen, but they did anyway.
Which in a way is going to make his passing just all the more almost tragic in a way.
Yes.
This is also, you can also think of this as a life statement, even though they're not hearing it, but you can think of this as a life statement for both Jakar and Londo.
Uh-huh.
Because this is moments slipping away where they have the power to make real decisions.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
This leads us into the formal reception for the emperor.
Everybody's there except Jakar, and nobody really expected Jakar to be there.
No, no. Jakar actually is busy making out his will.
Yes.
And that man in the odd robes that we saw earlier is lurking along the emperor's path.
Yeah, but he doesn't seem menacing.
He doesn't seem menacing, but is it the emperor that his interest is really in, or what is his interest?
Uh-huh.
And that's something we'll be soon to see.
Yeah, maybe they just threw him in there so we didn't forget that he was there.
Nah.
Okay.
I think the guy wanted more or less what had happened. He's a smart. He's not a dummy, so he knows what he's doing is going to be the surest way to get caught.
Uh-huh.
So, all right, was it just me? And yes, I know it's a small plate, but Susan's just loading up her. Actually, it almost looks more of a napkin or of such, but she's just loading up.
Yeah.
A true soldier, you eat when you can.
Well, how often do you get that ambassadorial level food? For a royal reception, the food's going to be a little better than usual.
Yeah, and it looked like it was actually a sushi spread.
Ah.
I definitely saw what looked like California roll on there. So it's like, okay, were they really doing lunch at the... But anyway, yeah, the Ranger, Garibaldi's no dummy. He knows he's been followed.
Yeah, it's almost like he's got spidey sense.
Mm-hmm. And the Ranger, or I shouldn't be calling... Well, heck with it. I've called him a Ranger enough. If you don't know what a Ranger is, you're about to find out in a couple of scenes. So I'm just going to stay with it.
Well, the Emperor is now on his way to his reception.
Correct.
And he doesn't make it.
No, he stumbles, he falls. The two telepaths that are with him panic, and Franklin rushes out.
Yeah, he's suddenly called away.
Yeah, and he doesn't stroll, he doesn't do the little fast walk thing, he dashes.
Yeah.
So the people there, at least the people who know Franklin, like Sheridan and Susan, they know something bad is up.
Yep.
In MedLab, we find out, oh yeah, the Emperor was definitely planning something.
Yeah. He sends Franklin out to he wants Franklin to go to Jakar and tell him something.
Mm-hmm. And when Franklin wants to know, well, why me? Why not have one of your people do it? The Emperor tells him very simply, they wouldn't do it.
Right. Plus, Turhan's no idiot. He probably realizes that there's a bunch of vultures circling around just waiting for him to kick off so they can try to grab power. He knows he can trust Dr. Franklin.
Yep. And speaking of vultures, Rifa's gloating, Veer's brooding, and Londo, well, he's teetering on the precipice.
Yes, he is.
Now, I believe we've been hearing about Quadrant 14 for some time now.
Right.
As far as negotiations.
Mm-hmm.
Let's just say Londo decides he will take care of it.
Yeah. Well, they know they have to do something to get attention on their faction, Rifa's faction, whom Londo seems to have tossed in with. They know they have to do something to get the attention on them so that they can jump in and grab power.
Yep. This is the decision of everything that Londo has done. This is where he finally does cross the line.
Yeah. No one knows yet why the Emperor has arrived. And Rifa just simply pushes Londo over the edge.
Yeah.
Well, maybe Rifa jumps over the edge and pulls Londo with him, might be a better way to put it, too.
Yet we've still got Veer acting as Londo's conscience.
Oh, Londo's not listening to him.
No, I think in this case, Londo's the one whose fingers are in his ears and who's humming very loudly.
Yeah. Well, he's concerned about his own survival, too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And for that, Londo starts the war that ends in so much calamity.
Yeah. War that dominates the series for quite some time.
Mm-hmm. Now, we get a lightening up moment. After this much intensity, we get a moment of lightening up.
Yep.
Jakar is talking to his contacts back on Narn.
Right.
And his fateful decision was taken from him.
Yeah, he got derailed.
Yep. And well, we'll let Jakar describe it himself.
I was ready. I had prepared myself. I had made my peace with the universe, put all my affairs in order. I had the dagger in my hand. And he has the indecency to start dying on his own. Never in my life have I seen a worse case of timing. Well, you'd think he could have waited a few more minutes before... Who is it?
Dr. Franklin.
Maybe it's good news. With luck, he's feeling better. All they have to do is prop him up for 2 minutes. I'll call you back.
Yeah. Now, you mentioned that's a lightening up moment. I mean, but it's still dark. It's Jakar. He's having this meltdown because it's like, how dare he get sick and die before I have a chance to slip a dagger in him, you know? So Jakar wanted to make very plain that he was going to handle this situation one way or another, but it got snatched away from him.
In a way, Jakar's feet are just about to get cut out from under him because Franklin delivers the Emperor's message. He's sorry.
Yeah. Was that a surprise to you?
Yes, actually it was. In the simplicity, I expected that the Emperor was going to do something conciliatory, something to try and make things up, but I'm sorry, we were wrong, went far beyond what I actually expected because, I mean, this is like the Pope speaking ex cathedra. He was speaking for the entire Centauri people there. So that did catch me as a bit of as a surprise the first time I saw it. It's like, wow.
If he had delivered that speech, that apology speech, if Jakar didn't kill him and he didn't die on his own, he would have definitely...
Yeah, he'd have been assassinated. I will say this, Franklin was the right person to deliver that message.
Yes.
I don't think there was anyone else on the station that could have.
Yeah.
Other than the Emperor himself.
Yeah, and Jakar's reaction, he was just floored.
Like I said, I called that a light moment at first, and then in spite of the sinister nature of it, and then it dives right back into the intensity with this, but that intensity continues straight over because now we have Londo in what is a very important, it's a prophetic dream.
Yes.
It ties the past and the future together in a lot of ways because we see the hand reaching out.
Right.
We see the shadow craft over Centauri Prime.
Mm-hmm.
At least on a somewhat younger, probably about the same age of Londo as we see now. But of course, obviously, if that is just a dream, it's just a dream of his. You can make the argument: is that his conscience, or is he seeing prophecy into the future?
Now, these are prophecies because he mentions earlier in the series that the Centauri are unfortunate because they do get to see the circumstances of their own deaths.
Right. And that's the second part of the dream. We see a much older Londo as Emperor with he and Jakar choking each other to death.
Right.
And Jakar is much more tattered and has a bandage over his eye.
Yep.
So it's like, okay, how did we get there?
We have to talk about that. We'll have to talk about that much later.
Remember, we heard about this all the way back in the very first episode.
Oh yeah.
So,
but appearances
in the Gathering, actually.
Yeah, appearances can be and are in Babylon 5 deceiving.
As Jakar said, nothing is as it seems.
Exactly.
Just one side bit of trivia. Peter Jurasik actually knows what's going to be happening here. Apparently, Straczynski had to fill him in on pieces of Londo's story. all the way back to the gathering in order for the actor to play the part correctly.
Mm-hmm.
So
That's not surprising.
but it gives you an idea of just how planned out this whole story is.
Oh, yeah. And we've talked about that before.
Yes, we now get to see another sample of just how powerful these shadow vessels are.
Right.
I counted 3 ships
Uh-huh.
to annihilate the defenses of the outpost, take out some non-heavy cruisers, and completely annihilate the colony.
Yeah, everything is obliterated, and it's just simple and efficient.
Mm-hmm.
Very quickly done.
Yep. And while all of this is happening, I think one of the most heartbreakingly tragic scenes in the series takes place.
Mm-hmm.
And before we even discuss it, it is played absolutely with brilliance by both of the actors.
Yeah.
When Jakar corners Londo, and Londo knows what's actually going on in Sector 14.
Yeah.
You see an exuberant Jakar cornering Londo,
Yeah.
practically hugging him and buying him drinks.
And Londo is like going like, what is going on here? Doesn't this idiot know what's been happening? But he doesn't.
And he realizes he doesn't. And the look of self-loathing on Londo.
Yeah.
You can tell how much he hates himself at this point.
Yeah. Because he's just playing along and he's being a bald-faced phony.
Uh-huh. Well, one of the things, when Jakar is toasting the Emperor, one of the things Straczynski had noted in some of his notes over on the Lurker's Guide was Londo's response was almost on autopilot. If you toast the Emperor, if you're drinking to the Emperor's health, you just respond. And yeah, it was just tragic and disturbing watching that. And a counterpoint, that scene between those two, we switch back to the Narn forces being destroyed, and it's like those few Narn left, rather than running for their lives, they attack.
Yeah.
I mean, an utterly hopeless gesture, but still.
Yeah.
They do well. There's the witnesses there that it's the Centauri. So now the Narn know who's responsible.
Yeah. And the Centauri arrived way too soon, or the Narn wouldn't have known who was responsible for the attack at all, because the evidence is circumstantial.
Uh-huh. Though, in a way, I think this is what Rifa and Londo sort of wanted. They wanted it. At least they wanted the Centauri to know.
Oh yeah. Well, they sent them in really, really quickly.
Uh-huh.
So it was a setup. It's a trap.
It's a trap.
Yes.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And at the same time this is happening, Rifa, he's not telling Londo what's going on, but Rifa is taking care of other sides of business and is having the minister assassinated.
Yep. Prime Minister Malachi is assassinated, and we have a full-blown coup going on.
Mm-hmm. And in the midst of all of this, we get a complete shift in direction here.
Yep.
Because Mike finally talks to the Ranger.
Yeah, he's been way too busy to do that until this point.
And here we get some huge answers. And there's some jumping back and forth between what's going on, between Mike's answers and the other events that are happening as the Narn attack takes place. Because Mike's answers start out with, "Hello, old friend."
Yeah.
And I remember hearing a lot of people real happy to see Sinclair back.
I just thought that was so cool when he popped up on the screen.
Yes. It certainly seems that Sinclair, though, has been doing more than simply being an ambassador.
Yeah. Well, as we have the benefit of having read the book.
Read the book? This
Yeah.
isn't the Dune podcast.
No. To Dream in the City of Sorrows.
Oh, okay. Yes.
So we have the benefit of having read the book, so we do know.
We know the details.
Yes, and we do know that Sinclair is not necessarily working for Earth Alliance government.
Well, not entirely.
No.
He's certainly working behind the president's back, that's for sure.
Yeah.
And while Mike is learning the details of this from Sinclair, both Sheridan and Jakar are learning of the Centauri attack.
Yeah. And Jakar's reaction, I'll tell you what, I just knew that this was going to be some really serious stuff.
Yeah. I understand Jakar's sense of betrayal here, though.
Well, of course.
I completely understand it.
Well, he made a fool out of himself, more or less, the way he talked to Londo in Zocalo.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And while all this is happening, we're cutting back and forth. Sinclair explaining the Rangers while Jakar is rampaging. And Sinclair warns Mike that the Vorlon's involved. He warns him to beware of shadows.
Yeah.
Gee, you think the events of the two things happening might be interrelated in some way?
Yeah. And the thing is Sinclair's message was kind of cryptic. Watch out for shadows, he says.
Right.
I don't think we know or are supposed to know what the shadows are at this point.
Not necessarily, though. I think it's a pretty good, for us as the viewers, we've probably got a pretty good idea.
Right.
Just from the nature of those ships.
Yes. Oh, well, we know they're shadows. We know that. But
they don't.
Yeah, he's awful cryptic about it. It would seem to me that a little more explanation would have been in order at this point.
Uh-huh. And as you had commented in our notes, to stay close to the Vorlon.
Yes.
Yeah. Was that a warning or advice or?
Yeah, that was awful cryptic too. Now, staying close to the Vorlon, meaning because he's going to help or because we want to make sure he's not adding to the problems?
We're going to get our answers, and we're going to get our answers soon.
Yes.
But yeah, it was a very, very cryptic message. And as this conversation wraps up, the aftermath of Jakar's rampage wraps up with Sheridan's confrontation. And, speaking of tragic.
Yeah.
But Sheridan makes sense.
Yes, he does.
What good is Jakar going to be if he's dead or thrown off the station?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he's not going to be able to do anything at that point.
Yeah. Now, I've got a question for you. When Jakar hits the wall and crumples, that look on Sheridan's face, I have not been able to figure out yet. I'm not sure if it was feeling his pain or if it was just disgust.
Or was it pity?
Or was it pity?
And that's kind of the way I took it.
To just leave him be.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was just, again, just powerful scenes throughout this entire episode.
Yeah. Quite obvious why this won a Hugo.
Yep. Now, Garibaldi does fill in Susan and Sheridan on what he can about the shadows, at least.
Yeah.
Which isn't much at this point.
No. And he even gets challenged by Sheridan.
Yes.
And he says, well, if I tell you something confidential, how are you going to be able to trust me with confidential information?
Precisely.
I don't know. I think if I were Sheridan, I think I would have been a little upset.
I think if Sheridan had pushed, especially if Susan was out of the room, get Susan out of the room, and I think if Sheridan had pushed, I think Mike might have cracked.
Yeah.
However, I'm sure Sheridan was a little upset on the one hand, but on the other, I think he made the decision at that point to trust his people.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things that you see throughout that sticks out with Sheridan is he's willing to trust his people rather than to try and do everything alone.
Yes.
Except when he decides something needs to be done alone.
Right.
But, even in that case, it's because he knows what his people would lose.
Yeah.
And the news of the attack has spread, and it has even reached the Emperor.
Yeah, through Rifa.
Yep. And I think more than anything else, the Emperor's health is very frail. He's very fragile. But remember at the beginning, they say too much stress with the illness that the Emperor has would be fatal.
Right.
And it's the news of this attack that ultimately kills the Emperor.
Yeah.
So from that perspective, you can even say Lando killed the Emperor.
Yeah, well, more Rifa. Rifa is a scumbag. That's all there is to it.
Now, in this piece, you had mentioned in your summary how Lando misrepresented he didn't misrepresent Raul. He flat out lied.
Yeah.
This is truly the point of no return.
Yeah. Turhan whispers something to him, and he stands up and tells everybody that he wants...
Take my people to the stars.
Yeah, he wants the Centauri to continue on their course to regain their former glory as a major power, the major power in the galaxy.
Right. And the Emperor tells them, as you said, that they're both damned.
Yes.
Rifa, being the scum that he is, brushes that off, but Lando certainly seems to take that curse seriously.
Yeah, so who did Turhan mean was damned? Lando and himself, Lando and Rifa, the Narn and the Centauri?
I think he was talking directly to Lando and Rifa.
He had pushed Rifa away, though, before he said anything to Lando.
Uh-huh. In a way, it's almost as if Turhan knows who the real mover and shaker in this was.
Uh-huh.
Which would make sense because he's got access to Rifa in court.
Oh, yeah.
So he I think he's got him sized up well. And
yeah,
if nothing else, at least Turan did get his dying wish, because a couple scenes before this, he finally saw his Vorlon.
Yes, and he had a question for Kosh.
How will this end? And Kosh's 2 words just made the story.
Yep, and true to Kosh's form, he was just as cryptic as he always is. 2 words were in fire.
Uh-huh. Though it was cryptic, but it was one of the most, at least looking back with our hindsight,
yeah,
it was one of the most direct answers that I think Kosh has ever given.
Well, and Turhan seemed to understand it also.
Yeah. And I think that's where his dying curse to Lando and Rifa really just connect into each other. It's from that Vorlon's prediction to his curse. I think you can draw a direct line.
Yeah.
Now, in a lot of shows, this would be the end of the episode. It'd be over.
Mm-hmm.
But not Babylon 5, because now we have to wrap all of this up and set the direction for the story as a whole.
Right.
Sheridan pays a visit to Jakar, trying to help, and of course there's a council meeting to be called.
Mm-hmm.
And I think Jakar's quarters need a little work.
Yeah, I would say.
Though I can understand the need to let off some steam. But in the council meeting, we find that Sheridan has arranged to send a team to the outpost to take note and to ensure that the Narn are well cared for.
Right. And Lando doesn't like this at all. Sheridan sending people to Quadrant 14 to make sure that that things were done right.
Yeah, and I think Sheridan was telling the truth about sending people there, because, the best bluff is when it's not a bluff.
Yeah. Well, and, it brought Lando into line.
Uh-huh. It brought Lando into line on the one hand. And, frankly, in a way, I kind of think it was... I almost got a sense of relief from Lando of not having to go that direction at this point.
Mm-hmm.
I still think he was dealing with a little bit of conscience here. Because when we see a little further down stream, especially once the episode is over, it's a different Lando.
Yeah.
Oh
yeah.
And as far as the council, notice who was there, who had been absent for so many? Yeah.
Yes.
Kosh is there again.
Yep, Kosh is in the loop. Yep.
And here is where, in this meeting, also that we learned that the Narn had declared war.
Yes.
Which is odd, confusing in a way, because, the reality, the ones who had declared war were the Centauri with the actual attack itself. I don't think you could get further evidence than that. But
Right.
the last best hope for peace has failed, and the Narn have responded in kind.
Yeah. Well, the Narn have been backed into a corner now,
Yeah.
and they don't have any choice. Now, I don't know how well equipped they are to wage war, but nevertheless, they're going to do it anyway.
Mm-hmm. And we see some more wrap-up. The denouement continues. We find out that the new emperor is some remote nephew of Turan's.
Yeah.
That apparently seems to think much the same as Rifa. Now, we're going to see a lot more of this emperor's nephew in season 4.
Right. However, I will interject here that Rifa is not insane.
Just greedy, power-hungry, slimy, and pure evil. But yeah, too many people think that evil equals insanity, and it certainly does not, and I think Rifa's good evidence of that.
Well, Rifa may be crazy, but he's crazy like a fox.
Yeah. And Vera's rather surprised that Londo wants to stay on Babylon 5.
Yeah.
Of course, after that dream, it's like, no, Vera, I don't think Londo particularly wants to be emperor.
But he knows it's going to happen eventually. But the time just isn't right yet.
Yeah. And I think he gets the idea that this is something that he probably wants to avoid as well.
Yeah. Well, Londo has been calling on the shadows, has been calling on Morden for more and more and more. And, the bill is starting to mount up, and eventually it's going to come due.
One of the recurring themes in Babylon 5 is that actions have consequences. Even when you do the wrong thing for the right reasons, there are consequences, and when that bill comes due, you will have to pay that bill.
Yeah.
And that's going to prove very true for Londo as well.
Yeah.
Now, the other thread to wrap up is the Ranger does promise to keep Mike in the loop, and Mike gives his support to the Rangers and Sinclair in this, and has one last question. Does anyone else know about the Rangers and Sinclair's role?
That would be Delenn.
That would be Delenn, because we see hello, old friend.
Yes.
At the end of the episode.
And of course, Delenn, being one of the members of the ruling council, the Gray Council, she should know that the Rangers exist. As a matter of fact, the Rangers existed before Sheridan was brought into the picture.
Oh, indeed.
Yeah.
Indeed. The part that caught me here was I don't think she knew exactly what Sinclair's role was for certain until that message, because the look on her face was like pleasant surprise, and I don't think it was a matter of, and this is pure speculation, this is pure Raoul speculation. She knew where she thought things were going to go, but I don't think she knew that he was, as they'll call him at some point, Ranger 1.
Right.
Until that message. And I think that's what that pleasant surprise was.
Because
she's going to recognize the robes instantly. She's going to recognize his uniform instantly.
Yeah, that's very valid. No, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. So that sets up a whole lot for the future. And it's also, this episode really is the turning point in both Londo and Jakar's character development.
It is, yes. Jakar has a mission.
Uh-huh.
And Londo is no longer simply a buffoon.
Yeah. Londo's no longer the buffoon. Jakar's no longer the conniver.
Right.
Powerful episode. It won a Hugo for a reason.
Mm-hmm.
And watching through this episode was definitely an impressive reminder of just how powerfully written this show is.
Yep.
Well, Jim, this was probably one of our longer episodes as far as discussion's concerned.
Yep.
But we've been pretty thorough, I think. Do you have any final comments?
No, it was a great episode, well acted, some big name stars involved. Again, it seems like it is a turning point, and we've had so many.
Yeah.
in the first and second season. It's just another turning point that shows the importance of the characters that are on here, and the how do I put it, the dilemmas that they find themselves in.
It highlights why both character and story are, in my opinion, equally important to true excellence.
Yes.
In a series. Yeah, if I had to pick out, remember, often enough we do top moments and worst moments. If I had to pick my top three, it would be probably the quotes that we played. And if I had to pick out the thing I liked least about this episode, it's that it ended.
Yeah. Well, I always say to my band, or someone will say, what section do we need to work on in this piece of music? And I'll say, well, not very much, just everything from the downbeat to the double bar.
For those of you who don't know music, that means the whole thing.
Yeah.
Oh, gosh, yes. Well, next week, just to give a bit of a teaser, we will be talking gropos.
Yes.
Short for ground pounders. And do you think this would be a good episode to get a little help?
Oh, yeah. You bet.
Think we might be able to get our official resident military expert to join us.
We will definitely have to get in touch with retired Air Force Colonel J.P. Harvey to join us on this one.
Yes, I think he will have a lot to add to this conversation.
I would definitely agree. Well, shall we say so long?
I think so. We're about halfway through season 2 now.
Yes.
Amazing. But as you say, I think we're ready to say so long for the night.
Yep.
Well, my friend, can we say it? No boom today?
Oh gosh, there was some boom.
Yeah, there was definitely some boom. Not on the station.
No boom on the station, but there will be tomorrow.
Yeah, yes. There's always a boom tomorrow.
Yes.
Good night, folks.
Good night now.
Podcast terminated. Thank you for listening to the Babylon Project podcast. You can email Raul and Jim at the Babylon Project podcast @gmail.com. You can find us on Facebook at the Babylon Project Podcast. On the internet, we are at babylonprojectpodcast.wordpress.com. To subscribe to the podcast, you can find us on iTunes, or you can subscribe to the RSS feed on the webpage.